Last episode, we disassembled the block, checked everything, and because everything checked out good, nothing was abnormal, nothing is wrong with the block or the engine, we disassembled it and had it honed and, of course, decked and resurfaced. Now, look, it's all ready and all good. Now it's time to reassemble it. But of course, we ordered through HRC all the OEM goodness to make sure this rebuild is going to be good and strong. And of course, we started porting the head, so we got to work on it. And so, will we assemble the bottom end now? Let's go. Okay, first things first. We have a new page here that has 500 likes and 800 plus followers. We had to make a new one because my personal Facebook got hacked and I couldn't control the old page. So we had to make a new one. And here we have all the price lists of the major and the basic work that we do and offer, like porting and all the other stuff. So you gotta check it out so you can have a go at, checking out the costing of how we gotta do, or we build engines for you guys. And here you can see we even share the updates on the valve seals that we get and run. And also here we also talk about core shift. There's something that's often not talked about. This is just in the page. So I'll see you guys there and wait for you guys to comment because I'll always reply. And so remember, last episode we disassembled the block and checked it out and everything was good. So we had it resurfaced and honed like this. As you can see, just because it's just right after being honed, the inner part of the bore is turning a bit yellow or brown. That's flush rust. This is B16H. PH16A VTI, and this is the B20 VT that we're actually building too. So, now let's go to the workbench. Right here, we got the B16A water pump, which is for the B20 Vtec, and the ESi water pump, tensioner, main bearing, rod bearings, and the piston ring. So this is gonna be an OEM rebuild that's gonna be really good, right? So we're trying to get all the possible efficiency or horsepower we can get from a stock ESi. So now, obviously, let's go to the porting bench. Let's go for the head. But wait, let's check it out here first. Here is the intake ports. We've marked up all the sections before the port entry. This way we can see if we're going over or not. And this is just a perfect personal preference for this. But on the manifold, we do that to be able to port match it to the head. So here, let's look at the bowls first of the intake. Because on this one, we're going to go with the bolts first when we start porting it. So, yep, let's actually go now. Okay, now let's start with the carbide. But sorry about the hammering noise because my colleague is working on something and is tapping it and you can hear it, right? Okay, so now let's go with the carbide first. And you can see, you can pay attention when you rough it up with a carbide. We do it strategically on certain areas. This way we can equalize the core shift, or lessen the core shift being too drastic. So it's gonna be a lot better than actually just cleaning it all up, like hogging it out. All right, now let's go to the port entry. Now let's go, and here it's much the same. We start with the entry, like trying to work on the consistency of the port walls on the side, because the core shift, you can actually feel it on the left side and the right is all different. The bottom left is skewed to the right and the top right is skewed to the other side. So here now, let's look at it closer. Yeah, so you can see the port sidewalls are starting to get all to the shape that we want. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. This is gonna be really good. Next up will be 80 grit, so we can start smoothing this out to get the finish that we want. But if you're, of course, before that, if you're liking this video, hit the like button because it generates more activity and that shows the algorithm that there's more activity. So it gets spread out to a wider audience. And so every like that you guys click is very, very much appreciated. And that helps the channel grow more. And if you haven't, hit the subscribe button and also the notification bell. This way, whenever we upload something cool like this or any of the series that we do, like actually like this one too, you guys are notified. You just see it right away. So yep, let's grow the community and I'll see you guys there. Let's go, let's go. Okay, now let's go with 80 grit. We start smoothing it out because it's actually contoured well now using the carbide. So now next is of course with 80 grit. This way we get the close to the finish that we want. We sometimes go to 120, but a lot of times the 80 grit does the job on the intake finish. All right. On the exhaust, of course, we sometimes go with 120 grit just to get the finish smooth enough, but there are times that we still finish it with just 80 grit and it's still good enough. All right, now let's look at it close here. Oh yeah, now it's getting there. As you can see, towards near the bowl is still not yet done. We're still working on it, shaping it inward from the entry all the way to the bowl, and then we're gonna do that from the chamber itself. All right, starting to look good, right? Okay, now we go to the intake bowls. Here we invert the head. You can see one side we touched it more than the other side because of the core shift, trying to align it properly. So now here we go with the integrate 80 grit on the intake bowls. Sorry. All right. Starting to, get closer to the finished status that we're going for, but it's still not yet there. But we're getting there, as you can see. That's why we time lapse this so that you can see it quicker than usual. It doesn't get too boring, right? And now let's look at it closer. As you can see here, you can see the bowl on the bowl. You can see the ridge before the valve seat. In this case, on the intake, it's before the valve seat. You can see it's still there. We don't totally remove it because we might go over the ideal area or cross-sectional area, then lose torque. Okay, now we go to the exhaust now. We go with the carbide because the carbon buildup is quite thick, so we go with the carbide first. This way we get to shape it faster, and just it doesn't take too long. Because if it takes too long, that is fine, but the consistency suffers. So we gotta go with the carbide first, and then now let's look at it close. Oh yeah. Now you can see the shape is starting to get to how we want it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. All right. Now we go with the 80 grit now. Here we go. All right. We get the proper shape going. Get closer to the ideal shape because after the carbide, when we go with the 80 grit, we start to feel certain bumps that we couldn't feel on the carbide. This way it lets us smooth it out better. And then when you go with 120, you still feel some bumps, so we try to remove that. All right, let's look at it close now. But this is 80 grit, and you can see this is almost okay to just leave it as is. It's already good enough, but of course we got to do some more work on it. Yes, sir. And of course, while we continue working on the head, we're going to continue this. And so now let's look at the parts that we're going to use for the block now. Here it is. Okay, the B16A water pump is there too because that's going to be for the B20 Vtec that we're working on. It's going to run Gates Racing IDR sized belt, so it's going to run a B16A water pump. But the water pump for the ESi D16a6 is here, the tensioner, and also piston rings, main and rod bearings. All right, so now let's go assemble the bottom end, shall we? Now here's the rings getting ready to be installed, and of course the ARP rod bolts. And now here it is, well lubed up with the ATF and kerosene mix, pre-lubed on the rings. And of course here, we like to screw the nut onto the bolt itself lubed with assembly lube, with ARP lube. This way, when you lube it, when you're assembling it, it's perfectly and well lubed with the ARP fastener lube. This way it's gonna stretch properly. Now here we go, we install the crank, assembly lube first on the new main bearings, thrust washers, all right, and then we lube again the crank, and then the main girdle, all right. We lube the bolts first, the washer, so that it torques properly. Okay, hand tight first, yes. All right, a little bit more. All right, sorry, the stand is shaking because it's next to the stand. All right, now, first step is 18 feet-pounds torque. We're not gonna time lapse this because we just hear it. It's gonna be really fast. And plus, we always like hearing the clicking sound. Yes, all right. There you go. Yes. That's just addicting sound. Sorry about that. I'm just I love hearing that whenever I'm torquing stuff. All right. The last three. Okay, now two more left. All right. Yes, and now we go with the second step. Let's go, let's go. Second step is 38 feet-pounds torque. Now you're gonna hear the click is gonna be louder. Oh, you hear that? That's louder. Okay, now we time lapse this so it's quicker. Okay, and there you go. All right, now let's turn the crank. Oh yeah, see how light that is? And this is on assembly loop. So imagine if we used normal engine oil or W30, this is gonna be even lighter, and we're just turning it like here, you can see with our fingers, or just with our bare hands. Oh yeah, something tells me this is gonna be running really good. So now let's turn it, get ready for the pistons. Okay, we wipe the bores here, okay. And remember this, the pistons are waiting, so let's grab it, let's go. And now here, piston number one, all right. Put the rod cap, make sure it hand tight before we're gonna stretch it in the end later when all four pistons are installed, all right. Okay, we go with piston number two now. Tap the ring compressor, get it aligned. All right, and then we go with the rod cap, first side here, and then we turn it for the other side. This is why put installing piston number 1 and 4, and then 2 and 3. It makes sense, but it doesn't really make sense because you still have to turn the crank halfway through just to get the rod bolts in. So it's the same thing for me. So I just go 1, 2, 3, 4 in order. That's just it works for me. All right. Here you go. All right. Now we have to stretch the rod bolts. All right. And here we are. We zero out the rod bolt stretch gauge. Let's check it out. Oh yes. Now it's 0. Okay. Now we torque this to 26 to 28 feet-pounds torque, and then we double check the stretch if it gets to the point that we needed. Like here on this one, it's 0.0055. Perfect, just as ARP suggests. So we do the rest, and now it's all good. And once we get all of the bolts done, we're gonna check the head. You can see the head now. We actually did some 120 grit pass here. You can see the ridge before the valve seat or after a valve seat, in this sense is the exhaust, is still there, but you can see 120 grit does a good finish for the exhaust. Yes sir, yes sir. And now let's have a look at the intake. Here you can see we're really getting there. We're almost done, but you can still see the core shift. There's a section that's way too deep that we don't touch because the port is gonna get crooked like that if you do that. All right, so now we're gonna finish this head. Oh, sorry about the zoom. You can see the core shift is extensive, but if we clean that up, the port is gonna be crooked, right? So now we're gonna finish this head, and of course, as you can see here, we'll finish up the head with Supertech valve seals. And of course, the owner decided to get an original AEM adjustable cam gear. So this is gonna be really, really good. And of course, an ARP head stud just to be sure. The torquing sequence and the seal is good. So as soon as we get done with the head and fully assemble the engine, you guys definitely can click here.